Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is our show for Monday. What is it? Monday, April 24th. I almost said 27th. I'm glad I checked. That's because I'm dealing with an illness. It's called Derby Fever. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Forte and Tapit, back with you in the Brooklyn Bunker once again, and joined by a man who we haven't had on in a couple of weeks, and very excited to have him back here. His thoughts, maybe you could say his way too early predictions for this year's Kentucky Derby. He's coming to us from Saratoga Springs. Jonathan Kinchin, what's up?
PTF, it's a little chilly up here. I was in Austin yesterday, and it was a little bit better weather. So my body I just don't know what to put on. My clothes situation, it's a nightmare.
It's that time
But
of
yeah,
year.
it is around the corner, and the last few years I've really tried to keep my head down leading up to the Derby because like I've said before on these airwaves, I used to do this thing where I would get so excited about the Derby that I would create all of these opinions that were hard to shake when I gathered information that needed to then shake them. And
Yes.
so I've it's something I've done as of late. I obviously pay attention to the prep races. Um, I even try sometimes. I found myself like not even trying to look at the figures after. Like I had to look to see what Forte ran just now before we did the show because I never really looked to see what he ran in the Florida Derby because I kind of didn't want to know yet. And that's because I'm a huge believer in the workouts. There's so many people that are smart that are watching these horses work, and you can watch all the works. There's a lot of different opinions about the works. All the trainers are seeing the works. All the people that know horse flesh are seeing the works. So you can really gather a lot of good information in those last, this week, last week, the last couple of works. And that's what I like to kind of use as my most important thing. Animal Kingdom I found because of works. American Pharaoh I locked on because of works, and Rachel Alexandra, who didn't run in the Derby obviously, but locked on because of works. They can really lead you, Barbaro. They can really lead you down the right path, and so I kind of reserve full judgment until then.
Orb was another one that Works helped with. It didn't end up helping us on the day, but the Brad Cox horse that was eventually put up to be the Derby winner in the stewards room. Well, not the stewards room. That whole saga. But anyway, another horse that had terrific workouts the week of, was second for parimutuel purposes. You can find a lot when it comes to the workouts. And just to give you a little bit of an idea about our process here, we're going to have tons more, including our final answer show, which is where, if you think we're sitting on the fence here at all, etc., don't worry. We're going to get to those final answers, and we're going to do it live. That's going to be on May 3rd in Lexington. Tickets are on sale now for that event, done with our friends at TaylorMade, going to be at the Malone's Event Center in Palomar. We're also going to be live, and you can buy tickets for Louisville on Thursday at the Galt House. And best way to get all the info and links to sign up for our live events, because there's more of them too. We're like a rock band going around Kentucky Derby Week. Just sign up for our free email newsletter. There'll be links there at the end of the week in themoneypodcast.com/email. So let's get to it, though, in terms of these way too early Kentucky Derby predictions, JK, and we'll let you go first. What's your first way too early Kentucky Derby prediction?
Yeah, I mean, I think Todd's going to win the Derby, and I am not like everyone who believes that it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to be Forte. I mean, you know, I think Tapit Trice is also interesting. So I'll start with Forte, and when I talk about the figures, Forte willed that win the other day. He did not have a good trip. He showed his class. He showed his determination. But I have to be honest when I look at it is that, I thought Forte couldn't lose the Fountain of Youth, and I thought he couldn't lose the Florida Derby, not because he was so dominant, but that he was dominant over the group in which he was running against. And he's not doing what some of these big Derby favorites do, which is running these triple digit numbers and really and wowing you from the clock. And I think that if you're looking at it objectively, considering all of those things, you'd have to consider him to be at least vulnerable. I don't envision a world in which I play tickets trying to beat Forte. I don't see myself trying to get cute and tossing Forte. But What I don't see myself doing is what I've done with horses like American Pharaoh and Justify, where ice cold, nothing else, no backups, no one else, just those horses. I don't feel like Forte is that type. Tapit Trice, on the other hand, who I do think is more of a kind of a press type. I think there'll probably be a little bit more value with horses like Forte taking a lot of the money. Tapit Trice did run a fast number in the bluegrass. Tapit Trice is the type of horse that has the type of pedigree that you'd think, oh, he's going to keep taking steps forward. He is the type of horse that when you look at his pedigree and you look at him and his training and the way that he runs, he's going to love the 1.25 miles. I love how close he was last time in the bluegrass, considering his other starts. He seems like a horse that's trending in the right direction. And I think Tapit Trice is going to offer some real value. So I know Todd's got a few others, but those are the two that I think are the most likely to get their picture taken the first Saturday in May.
Very interesting. So we sort of wrapped two predictions into one there for you, that Todd Pletcher is going to win, and it's not necessarily with the horse who's at the top of the market. Maybe Tapit Trice, currently second in the market, is one you're interested in. Well, I'll piggyback off what you were saying about Forte and the Florida Derby by giving you a horse, and we're going to hear a lot more about this horse later in the show if you're listening to the audio, and there'll be a whole separate YouTube video if you're watching on YouTube. And that is that I think Mage is a very live long shot to win. And this is just your most basic form study handicapping angle that I'm going to give you on this one. Yes, you could argue that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on the show, you could argue the trips in the Florida Derby between Mage and Forte and who had the harder one. I think you can really argue that either way. In the end, Forte prevailed by a length. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's the trips that are going to make the difference coming back in the Derby, but I will say this: Mage, to me, he misses the kick in the Florida Derby. He makes this menacing move going from basically last to first in a very short amount of time. He ran very inefficiently. Forte also was out of position. He absolutely showed his class. But to me, when I look at these two horses, the argument I want to make for Mage over Forte is simply that Forte is a fully formed product at this point, a multiple grade 1 winner, a champion. Mage is an up-and-comer. I mean, this horse has had 3 starts, and he's had a very tough go of things, both in terms of the assignment and the specifics of the trip and being out of position in those 2 stakes efforts. So I just think it's very easy to pump some blue sky and potential improvement into Mage. But here's the main thing for me, JK. You look at the prices of these 2 individuals internationally, very largely Forte, 5-2. Granted, I think he'll be longer than that on the day, maybe depending on what Mattress Mac decides to do in this race. But meanwhile, Mage, 25-1. I don't think that length of difference, especially given the individual trajectories of these 2 horses, I don't think one should be 5-2 and the other should be 25-1. Comment on my thought of Mage as a live long shot.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't argue with the logic of the price difference, right? I think that my issue kind of goes back to what my issue is with Forte is that, who are they facing in the Florida Derby? And why did these numbers keep not really breaking that century mark? And it's basically the same answer I have for Forte. Sure, I don't have an issue that Mage can win. But of the 2 of them, Mage is going to be a much better price. I do think that Forte is a better animal. I think he's he's a more proven animal. He's got class. He's been doing it at a high level for quite some time at lots of different racetracks, lots of different distances. So that would be the one. I'm not going to talk anyone off of a horse like Mage, but he's not a horse that I necessarily need to make sure I have as an A type in my pick 6.
Let's go back to Tapit Trice for a minute, the horse that it sounds to me like at this point, and you have license to change your mind, but the real way you're leaning in this race. You talked a little bit about the bluegrass. I think he also stamped himself as a really interesting horse with that run in the Tampa Bay Derby. And that's a race that's produced really good form with 3 winners to come out of it. He was nowhere halfway through that race and ends up winning, looking like he's got something in hand. What is it about him that you're so attracted to? Is it more what you're expecting from him at the 1.25 miles? Is it more just the overall trajectory he's on? I just want a little bit more on Tapit Trice from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like one of those deals, like where let's think college football, or and you have a really talented, well pedigreed 6'5", 4'4" quarterback that goes to Alabama, and he's surrounded by good players. Okay, you got Luis Saez, you got Todd Pletcher. He's being coached by a great with a good offensive staff. He's going to have all of the resources, a staff that knows how to develop players, knows how to win championships, and he plays well in his first game, in his second game, in his third game. You got to think he's going to continue to go on and improve. That's kind of how I feel about Tapit Trice. He's surrounded by all of the things that you need in order to continue to take steps forward. And he's shown a bunch of raw ability, a bunch of raw talent. And now he's facing a defense that kind of fits what he does well, which is going a mile and a quarter on the dirt, going against a bunch of other horses that probably don't want to go that far. He checks all of the boxes for a horse to take another step forward. If he was trained by Jimmy McWilliams, who's a 12% trainer, and like then you could question whether or not he's going to take another step forward. But when he's trained by a Hall of Famer in Todd Pletcher, and arguably one of the greatest dirt trainers ever, you got to think he's going to take that step.
Let's talk about my second prediction. I think this is going to finally be the year, JK, where we see a Japanese horse hit the board. We have another video up that folks check out, talking about the entirety of the Japanese contingent and some wise guy cases made for Continuar in that spot. And in this prediction, I will keep him on side as one that could potentially outrun the odds and hit the frame. But it's Derma Sotogake I'm really interested in from a figure point of view, from a horse with tactical speed, but who we also know can pass horses. And I like the fact that Christophe Lemaire has the experience in this race last year. I don't see him getting hooked up in any kind of speed duel this time around. I think if somebody else wants to go, he'll get the right kind of trip. And he is one of the rare horses in this crop who's shown that ability to run a triple digit figure, going on what our expert pals say he ran in Dubai, including Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK today. I think this could finally be the year where they get one on the board. I feel like this contingent of Japanese horses is just lengths faster than what we've seen. And we've seen them fire before in this race, but I think we might see something different this time around. Are you open to giving the Japanese runners a shot?
Absolutely. I mean, the success that they've had in international racing, you'd have to pay attention to what they're doing. I like that they've been here. I don't know which one it was today. I saw one of them. You'll probably be over. One of them went out to work on the track at like 6:50 and was still out there at 8:15. Just like was just hanging out there, just getting acclimated. We don't see that very often. They're usually out there for 12 minutes and then they're back in their barn. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, and the point that you mentioned, as we dig a little deeper, I'll check in with Sean Borman. I'll check in with Paul Matisse also to just kind of, hey, did you guys make a figure for that horse? I remember Paul made a figure for Thunder Snow that he really liked. And I remember Duke was alive to Thunder Snow for like $2 million in the pick six. Yep. Thunder Snow obviously had the issue and didn't finish the race, but he ended up turning out to be a good horse. So that figure was correct that they had. So I've got no problem getting cute and interesting in that situation. Like I said, there's interesting horses. There's not huge number standouts. And that's one of the things that's never really let me down in the Kentucky Derby is those numbers.
We'll do my third one very quick. Oh, I will point out we will have Paul and Sean hopefully this week doing another analysis of the key preps, looking back at figures, and certainly we'll talk about, I don't know if either of them have made figures, but knowing them, at least one of them will have a figure to bring to the party to go with Dove's 103 in that spot. My third prediction really quick. I think as much as I respect Todd Pletcher and specifically his contingent in the Derby this year, Kingsbarns is a fade for me. Just looking at the way that race flowed, I thought he was totally with the flow. Didn't finish up fast enough for me to be like an Always Dreaming or a Maximum Security. Those horses had favorable flows too, but they finished up in ways that hinted at larger ability. I think Kingsbarns, if he wants to be forward, he's going to have to run so much faster than he has in the past. I think it could take the sting out of his finish. Are you as interested when, you mentioned about Pletcher winning? I'm sure you're happy to keep Kingsbarns on side in that prediction, but is he a horse you have any particular feeling about one way or the other? And then let's get to your live long shot / third prediction.
No, I mean, it needs to be a little bit faster. One thing I will say is with the Louisiana Derby switching to a mile and 3/16, I think that kind of checks one box for horses that they can handle the distance. And not that you were worried about Todd's horses getting distance anyways on the dirt, something that he does extremely well. But I at least think that you could have that comforting fact. A horse I think be beautiful to use in like fourth and third, right? A horse that that's going to get around there while the other ones are stopping. He'll keep kind of plugging along. But I don't see him as a win type based off of that figure.
All right, let's get to your live long shot / third prediction as we get ready to wrap up this segment of the show. I will point out, if you're watching on YouTube, give us your bold prediction, your way too early prediction for the Kentucky Derby. Drop that in the comments so we can see what some other people are thinking as far as this race goes. Hit me with your third prediction.
I'm gonna give you kind of a 2B and a 3, right? My 2B that I kind of didn't say is that I felt like with Todd that his kind of second horse was the one that was the most interesting. I think the same thing about Brad Cox, and it's all because I like the bluegrass. So this is all a connected opinion. I think Verifying, would be his kind of more live choice than Angel of Empire, who's higher than Verifying on the points list. But I think my third prediction is look, I think the drought's likely to continue for Hall of Famer Steve Asmussen, but I do think that Disarm could run well in here. Steve's not the type of person who needs to just put this horse in here, and the connections aren't those type to just throw this horse in there. I think Steve thinks this horse is going to have a big rest of the year, so why not target the Preakness? Why not wait for the Belmont, or kind of plan more of a back end summer campaign with a Haskell or a Jim Dandy or a Travers? And the fact that they're going to bring this horse back says a lot about how I think that he thinks this horse has ability. And
I wanted to see a little more from him the other day, but I can see the case, with that this fluky thing of Steve Asmussen, one of the greatest, obviously, but he doesn't typically do his best work at Keeneland. And then the idea that maybe they were really in there, playing chess and being ahead of the game and saying, you know what, let's just run in the money and then, turn the screws for the Derby. I mean, is that a part of your case for Disarm as a live long shot?
If I'm being honest, I think that's a wild plan. I think that he was probably in there trying to win. I think he was in there trying to win. I think that it's a contingency though, that like, if we don't win, we'd run third and here we go. I just feel like he's the type of horse that can make some noise, just make some noise. I don't think he's a winner, but I do think you look up and you see Disarm's number running second or running third or running fourth. Significantly worse horses have run second, third, and fourth in Kentucky Derby.
All right, great stuff, JK. Appreciate you. We're going to have you back a whole bunch. We got our monster pods. They'll be dropping early next week as well. We won't do that production meeting in the middle of the show. We'll chat about that after we get off air here. But those are going to be coming down the pike, and just lots of great stuff. So keep it locked to inthemoneypodcast.com. If you want even more, we got our plus service, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus, and then the free newsletter. Again, the best way to check out our live events, inthemoneypodcast.com/email. I also want to shout out this fancy new shirt I'm wearing, JK, part of the JK collection from Old Smoke Clothing, oldsmokeclothing.com/JK. The two new Derby shirts are really, really cool, and I'm happy to be wearing them on a bunch of our programming here. Where can folks get these?
That one we do have. So I think that one. Yes.
The horseshoes.
oldsmokeclothing.com/JK. And then we also have the kind of abstract rose looking one. And then the Derby will be selling them at on location. Not that one. They have a special one that they got. It's kind of like the rose abstract one that we have on the website, but it also has like a lily in it as well. So it's kind of a Derby cool. Oaks. Yeah, it's a cool shirt.
I've got to complete the collection. I've got the ones from last year. I love all the stuff, and it's great having you on, and look forward to hanging out more soon and doing these live events coming up as well. All right, so keep it locked here, and we'll be back right after this.